Okay, hi guys. This is going to be an introduction video to what a square root is. And it's going to be real basic here just to kind of get you guys started. So a square root is an operation that is the opposite of squaring a number. So we know things like 2 squared means 2 times 2, which equals 4. We're very comfortable with that math. We know that 3 squared means 3 times 3, which is 9. And we can keep doing this. 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, etc., etc. Well, the square root is kind of the reversal of that process. And it looks like this. It comes with a little symbol. A square root makes a symbol that looks kind of like that. Almost like a V or something. Students often say that. And the way the square root works is it reverses this backwards. So if I said I want to get the square root of 4. Well, what did it take to get a 4? Well, it was 2 times 2 is 4, or 2 squared. So the square root of 4 is equal to 2. The square root of 9 would then be equal to 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. The square root of 16 would then be equal to 4, because 4 times 4 is 16. So that's how square root works. It reverses that process. In algebra, when we're dealing with variables, you can think of it like this. The square root of x squared would be what? Well, x times x is equal to x squared. So the square root of x squared is x. And the reason this is so helpful to us, this square root operation, is because it helps us solve equations. So for instance, if I told you I had x squared minus 3 equaled 6, I now have the ability to solve for x. Solve for x. Before I knew what a square root was, I would have a really hard time with this problem. But now it's going to be easy. I'm going to add 3 to the other side. I'm going to get x squared equals 6 plus 3, which is 9. And then to get rid of the squared part of this, okay, I'm going to do the same thing to both sides. I'm going to use the square root operation. I'm going to square root the 9 and the x squared. The square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 9 is 3. So x is equal to 3. 3 is my answer. A super helpful tool when we're solving these equations is the square root operation. It does get more complicated than this. There's going to be higher levels to this. For instance, let's think about this problem just a little bit more. We're going to go down below down here. Yeah, 3 times 3 is 9. So the square root of 9 is equal to 3. I think we're comfortable with that understanding. But what about negatives? What is a negative 3 times a negative 3? Negative 3 times a negative 3, isn't that also a positive 9? Negative times a negative is a positive. So couldn't we also say that the square root of 9 is equal to negative 3? Because a negative times a negative gives me a positive 9. So there's actually kind of two answers. The square root of 9 is 3, but it's also negative 3. So up here when I was solving for x, I kind of lied. We weren't completely done with this problem. It's equal to 3, or x is equal to negative 3. There are two answers to this problem. Both of those are the square root of 9. And a lot of times what we do in our class is we simplify this by saying, you know what, x is equal to a positive or a negative 3. So we're going to combine that together and say x equals plus or minus 3, positive or negative 3. Both answers are okay. And if I'm checking my answer and I'm trying to really make sure I'm correct, look what that's going to look like. Let's do a check. So remember the problem was x squared minus 3 equals 6. I'm going to check 3 and make sure it works. So now it's going to be something squared minus 3 equals 6. I'm going to put 3 in there. What's 3 squared? 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. Minus 3 equals 6. Yeah, 9 minus 3 is 6, so 6 equals 6. Check. Let's check my other answer. I said plus or minus 3, so doing my check again, something squared minus 3 equals 6. Let's put a negative 3 in there. Negative 3 squared is negative 3 times negative 3, that's 9, minus 3 equals 6. Same problem, 9 minus 3 is 6, 6 equals 6, check. So there are 2 answers to this problem. And now I've kind of verified it. So when we were taking those notes earlier, and we were writing out all those square roots back at the start of our notes, square root of 4 is 2, square root of 9 is 3, square root of 16 is 4. Technically, square root of 4 is plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3 for 9, plus or minus 4 for 16. There's actually 2 answers to these square roots. If I said, what's the square root of 49? I'm sure you could think real fast and say, oh, 7 times 7 is 49, so 7. But it's plus or minus 7 for a value. If you're trying to do any of these on a calculator, all calculators typically, or most basic calculators, have a square root function. And for mine, you can see it's right there. So you'll have to kind of look at your own calculator and kind of find where that key is, or that button. And for mine, here's how it works. You hit the square root first, and then you put in the number, 49. Some of your calculators, you might have to type in 49 and then hit the square root button. So you'll have to play with it, but you should get 7 as an answer. Your calculator is not going to say plus or minus 7. It's going to expect you to know that. So the answer is 7 and it's negative 7, and you got to remember that. Calculator's not going to tell you that. So be careful, make sure you kind of understand that concept. Some square roots are decimals, and that's really why we need the calculators, because I can do the square root of 49 in my head, but I can't do the square root of 50 in my head. I could guess it, but I wouldn't be able to get an exact answer. The square root of 50 is not 25. 25 times 25 is a very big number. What's the square root of 50? 7 times 7 is 49, so it's going to be something bigger. But 8 times 8 is 64, so it's between 7 and 8. It's going to be a decimal, and probably a messy one, so I'm going to check it in the calculator. Square root of 50. Yeah, oh, you guys probably can't see that. Here, I'll move it. The square root of 50 is 7.071067. Okay, it's a decimal, a messy decimal. So I'm going to write that down. That square root of 50, let's make this a squiggly, is about equal to 7.07, approximately. So the square root feature on your calculator will definitely come into use when you don't have what's called a perfect square. These are perfect squares. They all come out to nice solid numbers. So these are what we call perfect squares. No decimals involved in these ones. This one is not a perfect square. It comes out to a decimal, so not a perfect square. And that's okay. Real life does not always have perfect numbers. So there are a lot of not perfect squares out there. Okay, so I hope this helps. It's kind of an intro video. We're building up to learning what's called the quadratic formula. So as you're watching the video lessons, be sure that you watch this one and then move on to quadratic formula as the next topic. All right, see you in class, guys.